It is a huge honor today for me to be podcast interviewing my classmate from we graduated in 1987, University of Missouri, Kansas City Dental School. I tortured and abused her for 4 years. And the reason I brought you in here today is because we went to dental school in Kansas City, and you were from St. Louis. And after an amazing 28 years of practicing real-world clinical dentistry in the St. Louis area, you decided to take up teaching. And I just thought, I've always believed that deep down inside, everybody who ever went to school, from first grade to the end of high school, at least one day was looking at their teacher and thinking, someday I'd like to be a teacher. I watched all 4 of my little kids come home one day or another and tell me when they grew up they were going to be a teacher. And I think a lot of dentists are wondering, tell us about that. Why did you do that? What's it like going from owning a dental office, and you were very successful, you used to buy and sell offices, your husband's a dental business broker. What made you decide to just say, I want to teach? And you've been doing it 2 years now, right?
I've been doing it 2 years full time. I think I was just at the point that I felt like I was on this treadmill with my practice, that I was just ready for a change, ready for something different. Love dentistry still, but just ready to go out there and try something different. You've raised your kids. You've just looking for the next challenge, I think, more than anything.
Now, would you say when you said you're on a treadmill, does that mean it was doing fillings and crowns was monotonous, or were you saying you were having burnout? Or
maybe a little burnout. I just think the business. There's never, if you're a solo private practitioner, you're never leaving. It's Saturdays, it's Sundays. You never get away from that practice really, and after 26 years of doing it, I think I was just ready for a change, just to see what else was out there too.
Now, what's you're teaching now in Arizona at Midwestern?
At Midwestern.
And they have a dental school, outside of Chicago, Missouri?
They've got one in Downers Grove, Illinois, and they have
That's a suburb of Chicago?
A suburb of Chicago. And then they have the one in Glendale, Arizona.
Glendale, Arizona, which you're at. But don't they have another one in Missouri?
No.
They just have 2?
Just the 2.
Or are they going to break ground on one? Or?
No. So there is another dental school in Arizona that has opened up another location in Missouri.
Oh, AT Still.
AT Still. Uh-huh.
Okay, well, they're originally from Missouri, aren't they?
They are in Kirksville, Missouri. They had a DO school, and then they've opened up a dental school in Kirksville. And then Kirksville is a smaller town, so they didn't have the population to make a dental clinic. So St. Louis, who had lost Washington University back in the late 80s, had a need to be filled. So the students are going to St. Louis then for their last 2 years of dental school.
And it's funny, you and I have been out of school 30 years, because when we got out of school, they were closing down dental schools. They closed down like 6. They closed down Emory and George Washington and Northwestern, and
right.
they closed down 6 or 7, and a lot of people were crying, like, what's happening to dentistry? They're just closing down all the schools. And so then the pendulum swings way too far one way, and now 3 decades later it's swinging back, and they're opening up schools, and now it's the exact opposite. When they've opened up 6 new schools, and everybody's like, too many dentists. When they were closing down the dental schools, everybody's like, hey, what's happening to our profession? So, but tell your listeners, what is it like to be a teacher?
The transition was, I think we all kind of imagined when we were in dental schools, it seemed like the instructors were just kind of holding up the walls a lot and chit-chatting, and didn't seem
when you
to
were in
be
school.
When we were in school, yeah, they didn't seem to be working as hard, I think, as we imagined. It's a lot different now. We're a lot more interactive. It was more of a transition than I think I anticipated, because you think, okay, I know dentistry. To look at a preparation and know how you want it to look versus to explain it to somebody, to go back and be explaining, the cavo surface, gingival axial line angle, you can look at it and say right there I would change it, but to explain it is a real process. So it was a pretty big transition for me. I think it took about a year before I really felt comfortable. And now I'm just embracing it. I'm really enjoying it. After being a solo practitioner for 26 years, to be kind of in your own little world, to be surrounded by a lot of colleagues that are coming from all over the country, very similar, or all around the same age, to have that interaction with your colleagues and then the students also, I'm really enjoying it.
So specifically, what do you do? You teach clinic or any didactic or
yes.
any?
I am I'm on the clinic side, so that means I get the 3rd and 4th year dental students. My specific school is set up where the 3rd and the 4th year dental students are paired together in teams. So they work together, they kind of mentor each other also. We are not really a department-based dental school, so we are on the floor doing all varieties of dentistry on the floor, just like you would in private practice. Really trying to model a private practice.
So you mean
for
you don't
those
have departments?
students.
You don't have like on the specialty. You don't have endo, perio, pedo,
Well,
pros.
we do have. We do, but most things are being done on the floor. So I know when we went to school, we were teams. And we had a specialist for each team. So each team had an endodontist, a prosthodontist. What else we had? Ortho was a specialty then, I guess.
Yeah.
But we had a dentist that was your restorative dentist. So if we were doing a filling, we went to that specific dentist to check that. So in our case, we are general dentists that are overseeing and checking. One student may be doing endo on the floor, another one may be restoring implants. A variety, a little bit of everything through our day. So it keeps you challenged. You got to be on your toes.
So what's the health of the profession? What kind of kids are being attracted to dental school, and is the graduating classes make our profession proud, or are you having a generation gap issue?
No, I think that's one thing I was really wowed by. I think the caliber of students that we're getting, or individuals coming into dentistry, are exceptional. I was so impressed to just see them in the clinic, just how ready they were to start, to go from mannequins to working on human beings. And they're just very nice, kind individuals. I think they kind of lift you up too, in that they are appreciative and they're kind, and so it makes it fun to come to work every day. And
I always, whenever I'm in a dental school, at least twice I sit there and I look at the caliber of people there, and I'm looking at the caliber of us 5 guys who lived in our bachelor pad 5 blocks from dental school, and I just think, man, you're twice as honorable as me and my 5 roommates. And I just think they're exceptional.
They really are,
and they're so bright-eyed and bushy-tailed
and more, I think so much now, part of the admissions process, so many of these students have done volunteer work. They've really researched the profession before and have a good idea of what they're getting into.
That's a secret. I don't know if a lot of dentists listening are aware of this because they might not be working in a dental school or close to dental school, but one of the biggest secrets on getting accepted in dental school, if you have no voluntary work on your application or resume, you're dead on arrival. They want to see that I, went and volunteered at the St. Vincent de Paul, or I went to a Mexico African mission, or went to Vietnam. If you have no charity, I know you're.
Well, we say, everybody that's applying for dental school will say, I'm passionate about dentistry. But how did you take those words into actions? What did you do? Did you just volunteer one thing, or did you go through many different aspects of dentistry to really volunteer and get an idea for what the profession is, what you were getting yourself into also?
So are you glad you became a dentist?
Absolutely.
Absolutely?
Absolutely.
So let's go back. I've always wondered this about dentistry. I've always thought the curse of dentistry, the one bad thing about it is, let's say you have 2 kids, and one, ever since they're a little kid, just starts drawing and painting, and everybody's like, oh my God, you got talent. The other kid goes to 8 years of college in art school and gets a doctorate in art and drawing and painting. And then all the people are like, oh my God, this little girl who never went to school, what a magnificent painter. And this girl's got a doctorate in painting. You're like, yeah, you need to practice more. Because dentistry, it's not like you're a math major or a physics major where it's all in your head. You got to translate your head. And we work with our hands. So when you're checking on students, I'm just curious, when you're checking on students, do you sit there and look at kids and say, that kid's really got a set of hands? and maybe an A, B, or C, D student. And this kid's like maybe an honor roll valedictorian, but those preps are just. Do you see that, or is dentistry technical enough where it's the painting art? Like, could you sketch me? Could you draw me right now to where if I showed it to my 4 kids, they'd all say that's my dad? I can't do that to you. I don't have that ability.
Right. I mean, have me sketch out a tooth, and it's not a very pretty tooth sometimes either, I think, you know.
So when you're checking students, do you see that variance, or is that not really an issue?
Well, don't they say, I mean, I don't know if this is, I believe this to be true, that most of us are average dentists, technically. There's a few that are exceptional, you know, skill-wise, and there's a few that are a little more subpar, but most of us are in that same range, and I think I find that to be true. But then I think we bring so much else to the table, you know, our personalities, you know, how we relate to people, how we relate to our staff. I think that, you know, you can have exceptional technical skills and not be a people person and be able to relate to people, or maybe not even be a compassionate person. And
those are the ones who fail miserably.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And if you get an A in people skills and you're the worst dentist in town, you'll be a millionaire.
Well, don't they say, would they judge you whether you you care, or whether you hurt them when you were giving them a shot, or, you know? I still think that probably holds true.
So what are the seniors thinking about when they're graduating? Are they bright-eyed and bushy-tailed? Are they afraid? Are they nervous? What are their issues when you go back 30 years ago into their heads right now?
I think they're probably very similar to the way we were. I think they do have an advantage now. I know when we graduated from school, I don't know how much you remember this, but
she points to me, but I don't remember. Did I kill that many brain cells in college?
But do you remember, we had graduation, I think it was on a Sunday night, and then we had boards the following Monday morning. And so rather than enjoy graduation, our families are all there, we were losing our cookies because we knew the next morning we were going to be hoping our patient showed and our inlay cast the way it was supposed to.
Are they still doing boards now like that?
Well, their boards, they're doing, I mean, most of the students now are taking their boards in, you know, the spring, winter, spring, so that they're ready when they graduate to really hit the ground running, that they've got that out of the way prior to graduation.
Are the boards on live patients or mannequins?
Live patients.
And see, that's just by definition of any form of intelligence. You know, it's not a standardized test, and it can't be fair. Yeah. I remember my board patient, I had this guy who I was paying money to come in for a filling, and he no-showed. How was that my fault?
Exactly.
I mean, I still was able to scratch up. I went to the sterilization room. I was at Loma Linda, and I went to the sterilization room. There's these 5 lovely ladies in sterilization. I just said, I'll do anything for anyone with a cavity. And some sweet little, what religion is out there in Loma Linda? That's, what city is that in? It's one of the 9 cities in that Blue Zone book where they have the 10 times as many people living to be a Latter-day Saints, is it? Seventh-day Adventist.
Okay.
And so that whole Loma Linda, Redlands area is the oldest living group of people in all of North America. They have 10 times as many people living to be 100. There's like 10 cities around the world. You got to read the book, The Blue Zone. Okay. And their religion is mostly vegan. And they're just sweet and adorable people. And all 5 women in the central sterilization just started working their tail off trying to find this little boy from Kansas.
They felt sorry for
a person with a DO. And I just thought to myself, a test should be standardized. And the other thing I thought was crazy is I just graduated $350,000 in debt, and I got to go take a test to prove to who? Right. The state?
Well, we know 30 years ago, everybody was saying the system has to change. This is unfair. And so here it is, 30 years later, nothing's changed. Pretty much the way it was then. Yeah.
But
so
at least our pot is legal now. When we were in school, we had to hide it. Remember that? And
no, I don't remember that.
So at least their weed is legal. You know, they can buy it at a store now. So they're coming out. So they're worried about the boards. If you've been there 2 years, let's just go back to last year's class.
Okay.
You've been there, so you've already had a graduating class.
I've got 2 graduating classes.
Okay, so a year out of school, just off of the 100. What's your class size? About 140?
It was now. It's going to eventually be 140, but 110.
So if 110, when 100 people walk out of dental school, a year later, is it like what percent are got a job what percent open their own practice? Like I opened up my practice. My practice opened 4 months after I graduated. I graduated May 11 and September 21. It opened. It's still there to this day.
But I think you were the exception. I think when we graduated, I went back to St. Louis, and there weren't a lot of jobs available. We had to kind of pound the pavement to find some. I know my first job, I know the hygienist made more than I did. And I was okay with that because I knew I had to pay my dues. I think very few back then went into private practice or a solo practice, started their own practice right off the bat.
And that's true in hospitals. The residents don't make a fraction of what the nurses make.
Right.
And then we're doing 24-hour shifts.
Yeah. But I think, back then when we graduated, I went into an associateship, and back then we used the term capitation dentistry, So it was a clinic setting. I think there's a time and a place for everything. That allowed me to get my speed up, get my confidence up, learn what I liked about a practice and didn't like about a practice, so that after a few years I was ready to make that leap. And I think most students are the same way now. I think most of them are going out and working for some, whether it's an individual or a corporation, and I think that's probably a good experience for them, in that they are, that they're not sitting twiddling their thumbs waiting for a patient to show up. I mean, I remember when we graduated, there were dentists that would say, "Oh, sure, I'll hire you. I don't have any patients for you. There's a chair here." That would not have done me any good, and I don't think that's probably serves the graduates well either. I want them to get out. I want them to be busy. I want them to get their confidence, get more experiences, and learn what they like and don't like.
So do you know off the top of your head their clinical requirements to graduate? What is it, like 75? I think we were 50 extractions, 75 fillings, 15 units of endo.
25 crowns was the only thing I do I remember. For some reason, I remember crowns.
From us in school?
Yeah, it was 25 crowns.
So 25 crowns, I think it was 50 extractions, 75 fillings, 15 units of endo, 15 canals of endo, and 15 units of removable. That's how I remember it.
You remember better than I did. I only remember the crowns.
But do you know what the requirements are nowadays?
We are competency-based. We are not numbers-based.
Explain that.
I think, we talk about competency and we talk about proficiency. Competency means that you're able to, sit down without a lot of instruction and know what you're doing and do a good job on, whatever procedure that might be. But then you keep doing those procedures and you become more and more proficient. I think it works out. I think their numbers are probably significantly higher than what we were doing to be able to graduate, but they're not based on the numbers. I mean, I don't know about you. I think for most of us, when we got to our number, we quit pretty much in school. Do you remember that? I remember you got to 25 crowns and then you started passing them on to the person, your friend that still needed some. In that case, we know what the average of our classmates are, and so the bar just keeps being raised. I think that's a good concept.
You know what I used to love the most in clinic for us? We had that program where it was about 45 minutes away was Leavenworth Penitentiary.
They didn't let the females go.
Really?
Yes. I remember I was very angry about that. I wanted to go to prison. I wanted to check it out.
To see all your family members and friends and cousins?
Yeah.
Hey, a family reunion. No, what I liked about it is he was so grateful to have someone helping because he had a whole prison of deals, and they just leave you alone. Whereas in dental school, it seemed like in the clinic, it could take 3 hours to do an MOD amalgam.
Oh, yeah.
And in the prison, I mean, you just had them there, do whatever you want. And
we went to the VA.
Yeah.
Remember, we went to the VA. We did a rotation there. I remember we had lots of opportunities when we were in school. I volunteered and went in the middle of Missouri to, it was almost like a Winnebago that had a couple of dental chairs in it, and would go to areas with special needs patients, and I volunteered for a week to work on special needs patients. So they did give us lots of little opportunities, it seems like, outside the school.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that. I really like that. Hey, I want to switch subjects a little bit. You used to buy and sell practices while you were practicing, and your husband is a lawyer, and he was helping you on the legal buying and selling transactions, and now he's doing that. Does he do that full time in
No.
Scottsdale now? Just this is a hobby thing he does on the side?
Yeah, just more like a side. I think it's more word of mouth. He doesn't advertise it, but I think just through the years of practice that when opportunities came available that I would buy a practice, sometimes almost flip a practice, take a
Right.
practice that,
Yeah,
you know.
you have an amazing business mind. Walk through what
Well-
were you doing? Why did you see a practice? Why would you buy it? Why would you flip it? How does that
Well,
work?
when it started, I had a full-time practice, and there was a practice in a community about 30 minutes outside of St. Louis where I'd gone to high school, and it was a dentist that had had a lot of health issues, could not sell the practice. So I went and looked at it, and it was in pretty poor shape, and told the practice broker, nah, not really interested. And he said, do me a favor, go back and look through the charts. I think there's more there than what you think. And went back and kind of tried to finagle how I could have my full-time practice and then take on this satellite practice. And so I cut back a day on my main practice and went to this satellite practice 2 days a week, and gradually just built it up, turned it around. I had it for 7 years, bought new equipment, ended up moving it to a nicer area, but the patient base was there. It just hadn't really been worked, I guess you would say. And once I got it, so it was kind of busting at the seams, I found a dentist that was ready, had been an associate, ready to buy a practice, and sold the practice to him, and then went back to my main practice and picked up that day again. So my husband has, just through my business transactions and just being around dentistry for a lot of years and being an attorney, was very familiar with all the ins and outs of things. So, when the practice brokers were familiar with him, the accountants in St. Louis, so when dentists that were either buying or selling a practice did not have an attorney, his name was mentioned, and he didn't have to learn the ins and outs of a dental contract or what to look for or what was good for a dentist or bad for a dentist, and was very fair. So he's through word of mouth, he does a lot of that too.
You and I were talking before we started taping. It was interesting during the 2008 financial meltdown, the Great Recession. You were saying in St. Louis nobody went bankrupt, but here in the Phoenix Valley, 88 went bankrupt and 3 blew their heads off.
Yeah.
What do you think that was?
I just was surprised. I mean, obviously people would like to, the weather is, and we don't have the winters in Arizona that we do in Missouri. We don't have we have the severe summers and kind of the severe winters. So obviously, I think more dentists probably want to come to Arizona as opposed to the Midwest. But I was surprised when I did come out here, when we talk about the Great Recession. In St. Louis, I didn't know of any dentists that went under. We would complain that we were slower, we'd have more holes in our schedule. But I was shocked by the severity when I came to Arizona of, the numbers they talk about of dentists that actually went bankrupt and went under, and, just how much more competitive it is. So, when students are graduating and they want to stay in Arizona, sometimes I, encourage them, maybe look at the Midwest, that there might be more opportunities there too. I mean, I'm sure it's that way any area of the country that more people want to vacation and live too.
I mean, it was very personal for me. I mean, I had dentists and their wives bawling in my front room.
Yeah.
And they're asking me, Howard, what can I do? What can I do? And it's just not the time to sit there and say, well, how many bad decisions back do you want to start? And you didn't,
Yeah. Right.
you just heard. I mean,
Right.
I cried real tears. I mean, it hurts. But the reason I'm saying this, what I'm curious, what percent of those 100, you got 110 seniors right now? Mm-hmm. What percent of those 110 are going to sit there and say, hey, business is supply and demand. I know nobody needs me around a city that has 2 dental schools. I'm going to go hit small towns and rural, or go back to St. Midwest where it's needed, versus how many of them say, God, Phoenix. I mean, you got the Cardinals, you got the Suns, you got the hockey, you got Scottsdale, you got 100 amazing restaurants. I don't care about the money. I'm staying where I'm not needed. What's the breakdown in attitude?
I think you see it go both ways. I did see it go, but where students would go into some little town in Oklahoma. knowing that that may not be where they always want to be, but they were gonna, had more opportunities there. And then there were some students that struggled a little bit more because they did want to stay in the Phoenix area. But I think everybody eventually, they did find something. And when I say eventually, maybe it took them a month after graduation, but pretty quick, it seems like everybody is able to find jobs. It may not be I don't believe in a dream job. I think that's up high in the sky. I think, at least a starter job to figure out what they want ultimately.
And so who's the major employers? I mean, is it mostly just small individual private dentists hiring these associates? Or is it more Army, Navy, Air Force, Indian Public Health Service, corporate dentistry? Who's hiring the most of these
I don't
people?
think you're seeing as many solo practitioners as, what we used to see that would pick up an associate. I think you're seeing more groups, you're seeing more corporate, you're seeing a lot of military, a little bit of everything. But I think definitely, students are getting out and they're going into some type of group practice situation.
I remember, when we were in school.
Okay.
You were a pioneer. I mean, you're the generation. We were freshmen in '83.
We were freshmen in '83.
1983, and now it's 2015. Can you believe that?
Yeah.
Can you believe that?
We had 120 in our class. We had 20 females.
And the senior class had one. That I remember. That's how I remember it. But it was funny because back in the day, they were saying, "Oh, you girls are going to take up all these seats, and then 3 years after graduation, you're all going to get married and have a baby, and we're wasting the University of Missouri's education department, educating some woman who's just going to go home and make 5 babies." And every one of them girls is still working 28 years later. So. That would you say? Well, first of all, was that what they were saying back in '87?
Yeah, and you felt somewhat defensive because I know me and most of my female peers that we were all very driven women, pioneers in a sense because we were definitely the minority. But yeah, I didn't like hearing that, and what I have found to be true after almost 30 years. As far as I know, almost all my female counterparts are all practicing full-time still, most of them as owners of their own practices. So,
out of those 20, how many of them married a guy in the class? How many of them married a dentist from our class or from the dental school?
I can only think of a couple.
There was that one blonde girl who married a guy a year or two older, and they went to New Mexico. But there was. But
there were a few. Yeah, I mean, I would say. I don't know, handful.
But there's only 20 to begin with, so a handful would be 5. It'd be 25%.
That's right.
Yeah.
But no, I would definitely say the majority did not.
So when you went to school, you were the first class where 20% of the class was women. What percentage of the class, the 100 you're working on now, what percent of the junior, senior?
I think we're getting around 50-50.
50-50?
Yeah.
And what percent of those do you predict will be working 30 years later? Do you think they're the same type of 20 girls like you
Absolutely.
were?
Absolutely. Yeah. I don't think we're looking at this as a hobby at all. I think we're looking at it as a profession.
So let me ask you this. The Arizona Dental Association, with the executive director, Kevin Earl, who I love and adore, and their Terry Zalowski, who my president's, that's her, of Dental Town, that's her husband. They had a conference last month, and it was just billed Women's Issues in Dentistry. And they had 3 or 4 women dentists, and all they talked about was women's dentistry. Now you couldn't have a conference, issues for a short, fat, bald dentist, or issues for Irish dentist alcoholics, or So if I said, there might be issues in women's dentistry, someone would just say you're an idiot. But if the Arizona Dental Association has a conference just on women's issues in dentistry, I want to ask you. You've been pioneering woman dentist. You've been a dentist for 30 years. Are there women's issues in dentistry?
I don't know that there are. I think.
And has it changed from 30 years ago to today?
I don't think so. I looked at when we graduated. I came out, and I know when I came out of dental school, I looked at it that I was an equal, and I was treated equally. I didn't look that I was treated any different because I was a female. I was shocked to talk to female classmates of mine that came out with a different perception.
What were some of the other? You mean in our class?
Yeah, there
What
were.
were some of the other perceptions?
Just that they were treated differently because they were a woman, and
For better or worse, or
that they thought worse. But honestly, I think sometimes that's what you bring to the table. I came to school thinking I was an equal, and anything that did not go my way was not because I was a female. I just didn't bring that to the table. And I think today, I think it's the same way. I think the male and female students, I look at them as individuals. I hope as a practicing dentist, a patient comes in and looks at all of us as an individual, not as a gender necessarily.
I'm biased towards the gender myself personally. All my doctors are women. They are. I mean, the men are they're blah blah blah. You don't sense any empathy or sympathy. And my woman doctors, I don't know if it's because I was born and raised with 5 sisters and have 50 women working for me, but all my
potentially, but there's still going to be women that are going to be hardcore and not very compassionate, and there's going to be men that are going to be extremely compassionate and giving and caring. So the stereotype
comes down to how you make people feel, not what your genitalia is.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes when, if a patient came and said, I want all my doctors to be women, sometimes I almost felt like taking a step back, like, okay, what are your expectations? Issues. Yeah. What are you looking for that,
I've been calling it since 1987 that if I was just going to set up a business model, like you're trying to set up a franchise, McDonald's or Marriott or Hertz Rent-A-Car, I'd have it all women dentists. I always thought they had the mass. I mean, I had 4 babies and now a 3-year-old granddaughter. I just would think Mary would be better for my 4 boys than Frank.
But don't you want them? Okay, so you have 4 boys, but don't you want them to be looked at as individuals? You don't want anybody to have preconceived notions or not want to see them if whatever they're doing in their profession just because of their gender. Also.
So let me ask you a completely sexist question.
Okay.
Do you think the women in your dental school class are more likely to like pediatric dentistry than the boys? I mean, I'd rather jump off a 3-story building than work on a 3-year-old.
Maybe. I mean, I know
it's not overwhelmingly obvious. One way
I mean, I know. I found seeing pediatrics in my private practice was a great practice builder. Would I rather work on an adult than a child? Probably, because most adults were a little bit more predictable. But I saw the children as a way to build the practice, and because if mom and dad come to you for their child and they like you, then they may come also. So I think it's a good practice builder. But I mean, maybe we bring something a little different to the table.
Because there are some people saying that they would be leery of being a pediatric dentist right now because the reason it was such a massively hot specialty is because there was a bunch of male, older, grouchy dentists like me who didn't want to work kids. I mean, we didn't even think about it. We just refer. And now that half the class is women, that there's going to be a lot less referrals to the specialty of pediatric dentistry, and that it might not be as lucrative. But whenever you start making predictions, I mean, everybody has their own.
Yeah.
But do you think, based on looking at that dental school class now of half women, and looking at when we graduated 30 years ago, do you think there'll be less referrals to pediatric dentistry 10 years from now?
Yes, but I think there'll be less referrals, period. I think more dentists are trying to get trained to do more because, it is more competitive now. I think there'll be less. I think because there is a need for pediatric dentists also that I don't think is being served necessarily. I think more general dentists, period, are going to be seeing more children.
And Obamacare is like the 20 countries with a national health insurance plan.
Right.
Dentistry is covered for 18 and under. And Obamacare is now saying that when you sell a medical plan to a family, it has to include dental for the 18 and under part. So that's going to be massive economic upward pressures on pediatrics. So the supply of patients or the demand of patients is going to really go up.
Talk about, I mean, there's more people that want to go into pediatric dentistry than there are programs. So that right there, if you have an interest, you enjoy seeing children, and even if you want to specialize, there's not a program available, you can still see children as a general dentist.
Well, you don't even have to go to endo school to be an endo. You know, some of the greatest endo, I don't know if they want called out on this program, but it is Dentistry Uncensored. But who's the guy from Tulsa, Oklahoma? Ben, the guy who started Thermophil that's turned in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Ben Johnson.
Okay.
Back in those days, Ben Johnson decided he just only wanted to do endo, so he just said practice limited to endo. And everybody that thinks he's an endodontist never went to endo school. There was another one. Who was the most famous endodontist in Chattanooga, Tennessee? The big John McSpadden.
Okay.
I know dentists. I can point to you 10 cities that are about maybe 10,000 people, 8 to 10,000 people, where one of the dentists at the study club just said, you know what, I love endo, and I've seen your root canals fail, and you're always bitching about endo, and we'll just, gentleman's honor, I'll quit, I'll be practice limited to endo, and I'll never do a crown, I'm not going to steal your recall, and they're endodontists. And some of these kids that can't get into an endo program, I'm like, well, go call every town that has 6 to 8 dentists and find one where all 6 to 8 dentists say, yeah, we all hate endo. Same thing with pediatric dentistry.
Right.
You could walk out of school and go into a town of 8 where all 8 men say, oh, my God. I mean, I would pay you. When I remember when I opened up, there was a denture world. And every time someone do a denture, they bring in a coupon. They go, well, why should I pay $1,000 an arch, $2,000? Here's a coupon, Denture World, complete denture for $299. I'd say, anyone in this office, drive this grandma to Denture World. I'll call a cab and pay for it. I'll hire a limo to take you to Denture World before I make you a denture for $299. I mean, there's just some things you want to do, but I tell kids, and they say, well, you should go to endo school to be an endodontist. Dude, everything you learn in endo school is probably going to be extinct in 5 years. I mean, I've been out 28 years. Are you doing anything that they taught you in dental school?
No.
Anything?
No.
I mean, every time I turn around, I mean, in fact, I would say this. As I get older and older and older, I'm starting to refer more and more and more because some of those things like bone grafting and some of this stuff just moves so fast. You can't be completely on top of ortho and implants and bone grafting and endo. And I mean, you just it's too much information.
Something wonderful about general dentistry is that we can pick and choose what we like, don't like. We can try to do lots of things, or we can start picking and choosing what we want, what we really enjoy, and that there are people out there that we can refer to.
Okay, I want you to go. Okay. I want you to talk to this dentist out there. Most all podcasters are they're multitasking. That's why they've exploded. Okay. Podcasts, when you watch a DVD or a Redbox movie, you got to sit at home on your couch, and that's time intensive. These are all multitasking, and radio's getting crushed by podcasting because people would just rather listen to their own programming than the local TJ. There's someone out there. Tell them that's thinking, I've always romantically wanted to go back to teaching, or I always want to try. What are the pitfalls? What's the dark side of leaving your practice, going to teaching? What are the great things? Talk about them, because I'm sure you have things that you didn't expect, and I thought things that turned out better than you thought, and things that you didn't see coming that were a pain in the butt.
I said, being a solo practitioner, I'd been chief long enough. I was ready to be an
chief.
Indian.
What?
Chief. I'm ready to be an Indian. I don't have to be in charge anymore.
So you were glad to relinquish being
absolutely.
a chief. You're tired of being chief.
Yeah. It's like, let somebody else make some of those decisions. But, I think because dentistry, everybody kind of had their own way they did everything in their practice. You do have to be able to say, if a school has a protocol, that you will agree to follow that protocol. That you may have all these little shortcuts and things that you did in private practice, and be able to, you have to have that personality to put that aside. I think students, dentistry is very gray, but you have to teach kind of black and white. because otherwise it's just too confusing for the students. So you have to kind of put your ego aside, and you have to kind of sign on to the school's way of teaching and doing things too. That said, it's very, very enjoyable in that, you get up every day, and I feel like there's, pretty much everybody the faculty that I work with, we have a spring in our step. I mean, we are energized, and I think, it just makes you realize how much you love dentistry. I think we've all, you go back to school and you become more of a student again. You're trying to make sure you're sharp on all those things that you learned and all the new things coming up, because, these schools now are teaching our students, at the end of the second year when they're coming into the clinic, they're all certified in lasers. They're really on the ball. They are doing a lot of the digital, the CAD/CAM dentistry. So you're challenging yourself, which is kind of energizing too. You want to be the best that you can be for them. And I have found that, even now not being the boss, that if you have a good receptive administration, that there's a lot of feedback back and forth, that you get where you want to work harder, not just for the students, but also for the administration too. So I think you just have to bring the right mindset, right personality into it. But rather than thinking, when you get to a certain age about, well, when am I going to retire? When I'm going to retire? I found that coming into this different environment, I may never retire. I love this. I feel energized. So
I've always thought wanting to retire is a form of depression.
What would you do? And most of us in dentistry, especially if we had our own practices, we're so driven. Are we just gonna sit on our laurels? No, we're looking for something to challenge
Mother
us.
Teresa would have never retired. The Queen of England won't retire. Everybody that has a vocation.
Right.
Can you imagine Mother Teresa just saying, next Tuesday at 1 o'clock, I'm retiring. Screw the poor. I'm going to go drink some beer at the bar. It just couldn't happen.
Yeah.
So is it a Monday through Friday 8 to 5 job?
It is. And so going from, my practice, I had my hours down to, Thursday at 1 o'clock, I was done and had this very long weekend. But I almost found I was kind of getting bored. The kids are gone, and, what am I going to do in this long weekend? So now it's Monday through Friday. It's long days. You're on your feet a lot, but, I'm enjoying every bit of it.
That is so cool.
Yeah, it is. It really is.
So sometimes you hear the dark side from dentists in all 56 dental schools that they want to go in there and teach, but one of the hard, challenging things is politics. Whenever you have a big organization, how many total students and bodies and humans?
Oh my goodness. So, if we've got the third year class is 140 and the fourth year class is 110, and then there's, 30 faculty on the floor, not counting specialists. So there's a lot of bodies, and then that doesn't count assistants and receptionists. But I think you just it's what you bring to the table. You enjoy, especially after being in this, this little solo practice with my one receptionist and my one assistant and my one hygienist. It's kind of fun to be energized by all the different personalities and change. One thing I'm enjoying about this school is that they're always looking, is there some way we can do this better or different? And so you have to kind of embrace change. It may not work, it may not be the right way, but then you can accept that and change to something different. So
I want to ask you this. So in a dental office overhead, labor is the biggest cost. And then it's about, 8 to 12% lab and, 5 to 6% supplies. How does a dental school pick supplies or labs? Like if I'm going to send this crown to a lab, do you have an in-house lab? Do I get to use commercial labs? And what about supplies? What do you do?
Don't they say that's above my pay grade?
To answer that question?
Yeah. Well, no, I think it's basically a giant private practice if you can look in those terms. So whoever's making those decisions, I'm sure, are looking at,
But I mean, does
look
the
at
school
cost.
just use one lab?
No, we have
Or do you-
multiple labs. We have choices in labs.
Do you have your own in-house lab?
In-house
really.
lab. I mean, we have a lab person that's more the coordinator between, the students, the faculty, and then the
So you
outside
have, like-
labs that we use.
So you have like a short list of labs that,
That we use.
and are
then
most of them in the Phoenix Valley or some mail order?
No, they're all local labs
They're all local labs. Can I get that list?
that you want to use those labs.
Yeah,
we
because
can
I got
talk
a dental
about
office in town. I'd be very interested in because
Yeah.
I'm picking my labs with, 3 of us. It's the best decision of 3. No, it won't be public. I won't put on dental time, but for a couple of labs to make a whole dental school happy, that's probably some
I think
major
there's
scrutiny.
like maybe 4 labs that we use, and they're I think 2 are larger labs, 2 are a little bit smaller labs too, and then we do have a lab tech that can do repairs. So if we need.
So how does what do you say to a dentist if this guy wants to use 3M and this one wants Ivoclar and this one wants Kerr or how you guys call it?
No, because again, when you're hired, you are signing on to that. I'm going to. There's committees. If there's products that we really liked in private practice or something new that we can present to a materials committee, who makes that decision. It's not an individual necessarily, but you do kind of sign on to that. It's different than private practice that you're not making those decisions. They're they.
But it
they
sounds
do,
like you were good with it. You were tired of making all those decisions. You were trying just to.
I feel like
relax
I
a
have a voice. I feel like I have a voice. Yeah, but yeah,
But I think don't you think when people sit there and say, I just couldn't stand the politics in this school, or it's probably more them than the school because that's just life in general. I mean,
it's life in general, and I kind of enjoy it. It's like, it's not boring. It's fun.
Well, I only remember your 4 years dental school just being sweet and adorable and nice and pleasant. I don't ever remember you grouchy or moody or mad.
Okay, well that's
one
good.
time in I don't.
Okay.
I don't have one single memory of you.
I don't remember you grouchy or.
Well, I was stoned, so
You're stoned all the time,
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Actually, we weren't stoned because back then no one had the money for that stuff. I mean, it was so damn expensive. You know what I mean? I mean,
yeah. We were scrappy. We were poor dental students.
We were all
definitely.
poor.
We
In
were
fact,
very
we
poor.
only drank one. We didn't even drink Budweiser. If we drank Wiedemann's. That was the local. Remember that little Wiedemann beer?
Was it
Wiedemann.
Redbirds?
Yeah.
Redbirds we would all go to, which I think now is like some little Mexican restaurant. It was this dive bar and grill.
We were so poor. We only drank this local brewery would make these beers, and oh my god, yeah, that was I used to love dental school. I just can't believe I'm walking in dental school. I thought, oh my god, 4 years seems so long. Now it was 30 years ago.
I know.
And when people are telling me they're walking in freshman year, I just can't believe it's going to be 4 years. I'm like, well, don't look at it as 4 years. It's 4 years. You're going to be having fun and meeting people and doing fun things and making friends. And
Oh, yeah.
don't look at it as like a 4-year block. So I don't want to come back to a woman issue because I think that's unfair that since you're a woman, I get a woman issue. But I get this email a lot, and I've probably answered it too many times on my podcast, but I don't get one of my biggest complaints on the podcast is that, Howard, when you interview a man, it's always a dentist. When you interview a woman, it's always a consultant or a hygienist. So I've had that complaint so many times.
Okay.
So I'm very, very sensitive to having, I tell my editorial team, we can't have 10 articles in Dental Town. They're all written by males. You just can't do that. I mean, if the planet's half blue and half red,
So
you got to mix it up.
do you find that women dentists are not contributing enough?
Well, it's a numbers game. I mean, if you go back and if you're 50 to 70, that's only maybe 8, 9, 10% women. So 90% of the people saying I want to be interviewed, 90% are going to be men. And right now though, the waiting list for a man to be interviewed on my podcast is 3 months. But a woman, just tell me when. Just tell me when.
Here, I'm available.
But here's a question I always get, and I'm sorry if I repeat myself
okay.
to my listeners on the podcast, but I get this question all the time, and it's not just me. Linda Miles says she gets the same question. Sally McKenzie, Sandy Perdue, all the dental consultants get this question. Young girl goes in, she's 25 years old. She goes and gets an associate job for Dr. Old Fat Bald Guy, and he just says, "Woman, go do this, go do that, go do that," and they all jump. He's an alpha bull male. She buys the practice from him for $400,000. As soon as she walks out the door, she says the same damn thing. They all look at her like, "Are you kidding me?" And they said that they say that when men say do this, do that, do that, they just do it. But when the woman comes in and says that, it doesn't happen that way. I can't perceive it because number one, I've always believed this. I've always believed when you're in an organization, the people that are the nicest to you and always get up and be real friendly, you got to be leery about the most because maybe they're being really nice to you because when you leave, you're Attila the Hun. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I don't know what it'd be like to be treated.
I guess I'd never found that to be a problem. I think it's kind of what you bring to the table.
Yeah.
You know, if you sold, if it was all at once, I'm the boss and I'm going to start ordering. Well, of course, everybody's going to take a step back. I think you have to prove yourself. I always found with my staff that I wanted to lead by example. So, you know, there was not a task or a job. We were one team. We were all working towards that same end. So if they saw that I didn't mind cleaning a room, then they're going to do that much. I think I made it so that they wanted to work for me also.
I want to ask you this question. Some men theorize that there was easy lines of distinction between the man and his staff because being a man, you're not going to go to happy hour with an individual girl. You're not going to go to lunch with an individual. You're not, because of other social pressures, you're not going to get too close with them. And that maybe what the problem is with some women, Dennis, is that they're going to happy hour with him, they're going to bowling, they're going to concert,
and
they're
I agree with
too
you
close.
Because I always, when I sold my practice, I told them I could be their friend then. And I had staff that were with me, 25 years. I didn't have a lot of turnover, but I did have to draw that line in that I didn't get into personal conversations. I didn't want to know all the troubles that were going on at home. They weren't I had to be the employer. And so I did not go to happy hours. I did not, I had, the natural tendency when you get a group of women together is for everybody to be best friends. But I had to consciously draw that line and not cross it. And maybe that's why I didn't have the problem.
I believe Abraham Maslow, one of the greatest anthropologists of all time, sociologists who wrote the pinnacle needs, at the basic needs, food, shelter, and then self-esteem and self-actualization. He said that you cannot be friends with your employees because you can fire these people. You can turn their life upside down. And if you get close enough to someone where they think, well, you're not my coach, you can't fire. I mean, imagine you got 50 football players out there, and he says, "Okay, everybody run bleachers," and the player's like, "You know, my wife's pregnant. You know, I've been up all night for 3 nights. You know, I'm tired." And no, So go into more detail because a lot of the young women, I want you to go into more detail about how you can respect R-E-S-P-E-C-T, Aretha Franklin, but you cannot get too close and be their friend because once they realize you're their friend and you might not fire their butt when you told them you'll be here on time. So go into more detail about that.
Well, I just think you have to consciously always be somewhat on guard in that, to step away if a conversation gets a little too personal about things that are going on, that you always have to remind yourself that you are the employer.
So you don't want to hear about problems with their husband or babies or
no.
Yeah.
And
then,
I always
then I think some young kids, some young managers under 30 might think, well, then I'm not showing empathy or compassion or care. How do you frame that in your mind?
That because I think I always tried to be understanding, but also kind of in a sense cut it off in a sense that let the office be a way to get away from it and try to forget about it for a few hours,
Yeah,
and likewise,
make it a vacation.
I didn't want my office staff to have any drama in that. When they left the office, that they could leave the office and then they could go back and only think about home, that there was just a line both ways with it too. So
then the uncomfortable question that you probably don't want to hear. Money. Were you making more in private practice, more in education? If someone's listening to you, it's like, how big of a pay cut do I take to go back to becoming a teacher? Are you almost like a volunteer charity? I mean, because sometimes you hear teachers complain like, if I had my own practice, I could have just done $1 a day and came out ahead.
I think I was fortunate enough to be successful enough in private practice that it allowed me to have these options available.
That means you got a pay cut.
That's when you got a pay cut. Yeah.
That was the politically
but I think it's nice not to have the burden of I could retire if I wanted to, but I don't want to, and so I'm not making the decision to teach or to have a career change because of the financial aspect.
So you're basically Monday through Friday at 5. What's the school year? I mean, high school you got 3 months vacation. What kind of vacation? Is it a trimester program?
No, well,
it's semester?
I mean, we have quarters. We have
4 quarters,
but we are full-time faculty. So we, when the students, like right now, the students are on break, which is why I was able to come and talk to you. But we have vacation days. They're very generous with us as far as continuing education. It's nice not to have the burden, that when you're there, whether it's a 9-to-5 job or whatever, but when you leave, you've left it. You're not, I remember just every time my phone would ring that I didn't recognize a number, it'd be like, ugh, it's a patient calling, that we rotate having on call, but when you have on call for the school, you have your week, and then the rest of the time you don't have to worry about that you can really leave it and really, forget about it, which is nice after all those years of potentially having, the temporary off for the toothache or whatever too.
I think what I'm sensing in you is that you're happy. You're I can just read the happiness and karma. So you're just having fun, purpose, passion.
Yeah, and I would encourage other dentists, if they're of our age, of our seasoned dentist, it's a good career choice later on, just to consider too.
Yeah. Well, and remember that challenge? What was that challenge? The ice bucket challenge?
Yeah, I did.
What were they raising money for? I forgot why I had to pour.
That was MS, wasn't it?
Was it MS?
I think so.
Yeah, I had to do it like 5 times. So who's the ice bucket challenge? I want to do some more of the women in our class. So who should I do next?
All right, who should we challenge?
Yeah, who should we challenge?
Let's challenge Dee Dee Behrens.
Really?
Kansas City, Kansas.
Right
Let's
on.
challenge Lori Engelman, Leawood, Kansas.
I love Lori so much because she was a classy woman. She also married a short, fat, bald guy.
We all like our bald guys.
We all like our bald guys. So Dee Dee Behrens and Lori Engelman.
Let's challenge them.
All right. Dee Dee, Lori, and I want to. And I want to podcast interview with Stephanie Carmona.
And Stephanie. Okay.
Was it Stephanie Van Dyne, or what was her married name? Van Dyne or Carmona?
She's Van Dyne.
She's Van Dyne. That woman turned out to be like the implant surgeon guru. I mean, she's amazing. I mean, she really.
She's outside of Kansas City also.
Yeah, she just dove. She dove into implants.
Yeah. Yeah.
But well, hey, I really, really appreciate you coming down here.
It's been fun.
And I love that school. You guys brought me in there a while back to lecture. I think it was after school. It was like the evening
it was in
deal.
the evening. It was a student association.
And
I tell all my students, you will forever have a bond with your classmates. That you went through this program in the same time in the same place, and so you'll forever have the bond and be friends. So I think that's really neat too.
Oh,
I still have my yearbooks.
Yeah, I mean, every one of them, I feel like, is a brother or a sibling.
Yeah,
and over the years, they just drop by your house and they'll call you up and say, I want to be in town. Can I stay at your place? Like, dude, you don't have to call me. If I'm out of town, I'll leave you a key. But thanks for all you do. It was amazing going through school with you for 4 years.
Thank you.
And congratulations on your amazing career. Okay. And if you ever need anything at Midwestern or whatever, just let me know.
Okay, great.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.